Kawasaki dealers just made a huge mistake, and now buyers are paying the price. For years, high prices, hidden fees, and questionable financing were the norm. But now inventory's piling up and buyers are walking away. What happens if they don't adjust? By the end, you'll see it's bigger than Kawasaki. The bombshell Kawasaki dropped on buyers. Kawasaki dealerships had been operating in a comfortable bubble for years, but everything changed when they dropped a bombshell on unsuspecting buyers. The motorcycle market had always been competitive, but Kawasaki seemed to feel it was above the pressure of lowering prices or offering fair deals. Over the last few years, it wasn't just a matter of simple price increases. It was an explosion of inflated sticker prices, hidden fees, and financial tactics designed to squeeze as much as possible out of each transaction. What was once an accessible market for enthusiasts quickly turned into a realm of greed, where even the most loyal buyers began to feel like they were getting played. Riders who walked into Kawasaki dealerships in the past expecting to negotiate, or at least find a decent deal, quickly discovered that pricing had jumped dramatically. What was once an entry-level model, the sort of affordable cruiser every working-class rider could dream of, had suddenly shot up in price by thousands of dollars. There were no warnings, no advance notice. Kawasaki dealerships had simply adjusted their pricing to reflect a new, inflated reality. The reasoning behind this drastic increase was justified by the dealerships as being due to supply and demand issues, inventory shortages, and raw material hikes, all influenced by the pandemic. While these factors were real, the dealerships took full advantage of the situation, using it as an excuse to push prices skyward. But Kawasaki didn't stop there. The hidden fees attached to every purchase quickly became a major pain point for buyers. Standard fees like dealer prep fees, destination charges, and document fees were quietly added to every purchase, significantly inflating the final price of a bike. A buyer might expect to pay a certain amount, but by the time they signed on the dotted line, the final price was well beyond what was initially discussed. This not only alienated longtime fans of the brand but also sent shockwaves through the industry, making buyers question whether they could ever trust dealerships again. The combination of high prices, hidden fees, and inflated loans led to immediate buyer frustration. Kawasaki, once seen as an accessible and trustworthy brand, quickly became a symbol of greed in the motorcycle world. This wasn't just an isolated case, it was the beginning of a widespread crisis that would shake the industry to its core. As these price hikes rattled the industry, the trust buyers had in dealerships began to fray. The illusion of value. How dealers manipulated buyers. While Kawasaki dealerships initially justified their pricing hikes with the typical supply chain excuses, they quickly realized they could capitalize on more than just inflated sticker prices. They could sell buyers a new reality. This is where the true manipulation began. Dealerships weren't merely raising prices, they were rewiring expectations. They turned overpriced bikes into something normal. The illusion of value was created, and suddenly what should have been a huge red flag was now being presented as an acceptable standard. The idea of paying premium prices for motorcycles that weren't truly offering more than their predecessors was sold as a premium experience. Riders were told that the new prices reflected higher quality, better technology, and exclusive features, even if those features were often hidden under a mountain of jargon. Kawasaki dealers crafted an image that their bikes were worth more, even if that was far from the reality. Buyers were slowly conditioned to believe that this was the new norm, and the prices they once balked at became something they could accept. The FOMO mentality was another tactic Kawasaki dealerships expertly used to manipulate buyers. Buy now or miss out became the catchphrase in many dealerships. With inventory low and prices high, buyers were told they had to act fast to get the motorcycle they wanted before someone else grabbed it. In many cases, these limited edition or one-time offer bikes were not as rare as advertised. Instead, dealerships created an illusion of scarcity to pressure buyers into making quick emotional decisions. Riders who had previously purchased Kawasaki bikes, expecting an honest deal, now found themselves questioning their decisions. They began to feel as though they were being manipulated, but the allure of owning a new bike, especially one that promised more than it's worth, kept many of them hooked. This illusion of value wasn't just a financial issue, it was a psychological game that Kawasaki dealerships had mastered. But this illusion didn't last long, as buyers started waking up to the truth about their financial burdens. Don't let bad gear be part of the scam too. We picked the stuff that actually holds up. No gimmicks, no dealership markups. Check the description and get the gear we trust. The motorcycle loan trap, Kawasaki's financial squeeze. Once Kawasaki dealerships had successfully manipulated buyers into believing high prices were justified, they moved to the next phase of their financial trap, the loan system. The sticker price might have been high, but that was just the beginning. To make these bikes affordable, dealerships offered long-term loan agreements with manageable monthly payments. At first glance, these deals seemed too good to pass up. A few $100s a month for a new Kawasaki. Riders signed on the dotted line without giving it a second thought. But buried deep within these loans was the real cost of buying a Kawasaki bike: interest rates, loan terms, and hidden fees that would quickly balloon the final cost far beyond what was initially presented. Interest rates started creeping above 8% even for well-qualified buyers, but it didn't stop there. Longer loan terms were being pushed, sometimes extending over 5, 6, or even 7 years. While the monthly payments appeared manageable, the total cost of the bike over time became staggeringly high. What buyers thought was an affordable bike suddenly turned into an enormous financial burden that would last for years. The true cost of the bike, after all the interest and fees, was often twice the price they had originally agreed to. But the worst part, Kawasaki dealers framed these long-term loans as a favor to the buyer. "We're making it easier for you to own your dream bike," they said. In reality, they were trapping buyers in a web of debt, with payments stretching well into the future and riders facing mounting interest fees. Many buyers found themselves unable to afford the payments as their bike's value depreciated, leaving them trapped with a bike worth half of what they had paid for it. As the financial trap tightened, a revolt began to stir among buyers who had had enough. We went through rider forums, warranty reports, and dealer stock sheets so you don't get stuck with the wrong bike. If that's worth a click, hit subscribe. You ride smarter. We do the digging. The Rider Revolt. Quiet rebellion against Kawasaki dealers. The shift began quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. Riders, tired of being manipulated by the rising prices and hidden fees, gradually stopped engaging with dealerships. What started as a few individuals walking away became a much broader, silent protest. It wasn't a loud rebellion. There were no picket lines or protests in parking lots. It was more profound, a slow, deliberate withdrawal from the market. Buyers, once eager and excited to purchase the latest models, simply stopped showing up. What Kawasaki dealers had failed to realize was that the bond between buyer and brand isn't just transactional, it's emotional. For many, purchasing a motorcycle isn't just about getting from point A to point B, it's about freedom, adventure, and connection. Kawasaki had built its reputation by offering riders an affordable way into the world of motorcycling, but with every price increase and hidden charge, they chipped away at that emotional connection. Riders, especially the loyal ones, were left disillusioned. They'd been sold a dream of affordable, high-quality motorcycles, and now they found themselves trapped by inflated prices and a sense of betrayal. Buyers began to feel like they were no longer seen as valued customers, but as walking wallets ripe for exploitation. The trust that had once existed between Kawasaki and its riders evaporated, and instead of purchasing new bikes, riders started looking elsewhere, either to used bikes or to competitors who hadn't inflated their prices to unsustainable levels. This quiet revolt was a financial one, driven by discontent and frustration. Buyers started opting out of high-interest loans, refusing to be pushed into longer, more expensive commitments. The shift wasn't immediate, but over time the impact became clear. Dealerships that once thrived on eager buyers were now seeing empty showrooms and a stark reduction in foot traffic. Buyers were making a statement, not with shouts, but with their wallets. They had decided enough was enough. With sales slipping, dealerships turned to desperate measures, but the damage was done. The death of the dealership. A shift to direct sales. As dealerships struggled, a new model was beginning to emerge. Direct-to-consumer sales had been a growing trend in many industries, and motorcycles were no exception. Kawasaki's traditional dealership model, built on the premise of exclusive, high-pressure in-person sales, was being questioned by an increasing number of buyers. Consumers, particularly younger riders who were accustomed to purchasing goods and services online, began to see the appeal of bypassing the dealership entirely. This shift wasn't just a theoretical trend, it was happening in real time. Consumers, tired of the manipulative sales tactics, began looking for more transparency and convenience. Direct sales allowed buyers to skip the haggling, avoid hidden fees, and get a fair price up front. Kawasaki dealers, caught in a system built on exclusivity and control, found themselves competing against a new wave of competitors who had already embraced online models. Brands like Harley-Davidson and BMW were dipping their toes into the direct sales world, offering fixed pricing and a smoother, less confrontational purchasing experience. The convenience of online transactions wasn't just appealing to younger buyers, it was becoming the standard. The traditional dealership model, which had once held a monopoly on motorcycle sales, was being slowly replaced by a more transparent and customer-centric approach. In this new world, buyers could choose a model, see the real price, and complete the transaction without ever stepping foot in a dealership. Dealers were facing a growing existential crisis, with rising inventory costs, decreasing sales, and shifting consumer preferences. Many were forced to adapt or face irrelevance. The battle for survival wasn't just about selling bikes anymore. It was about keeping up with an evolving market that no longer valued the dealership experience as it once had. Dealerships are struggling, but the future may lie in a new sales model entirely. The road ahead. The future of Kawasaki and the broader motorcycle industry hinges on the ability to adapt to the changes happening all around them. The old model, where dealerships held all the cards and buyers had little choice but to accept high prices and hidden fees, is quickly becoming obsolete. In order to thrive, Kawasaki needs to recognize that the marketplace has shifted fundamentally. Riders are no longer willing to accept inflated prices and shady tactics. They demand transparency, value, and simplicity. For Kawasaki to recover, they will need to make drastic changes. First, they must reassess their pricing strategy. The market is no longer willing to pay overinflated prices for bikes that don't deliver the value promised. Buyers are shifting to brands that offer clear, fair pricing. Kawasaki must reintroduce affordable motorcycles without sacrificing quality, or they risk losing touch with their core audience. Additionally, Kawasaki must adapt to the growing shift toward direct-to-consumer sales. Embracing this new model could help Kawasaki rebuild trust with its riders. A more streamlined, transparent approach to purchasing would give them an edge over competitors still relying on outdated dealership structures. By cutting out the middleman and offering a more customer-friendly experience, Kawasaki could tap into a new generation of buyers who expect convenience and fairness. But the road ahead is not without challenges. The industry is facing a demographic shift, with younger riders less inclined to purchase expensive motorcycles. Kawasaki, like every other brand, must find ways to attract this new wave of riders while balancing affordability with quality. The next decade will be crucial for Kawasaki and the motorcycle industry as a whole. Only the brands that adapt to these changes will survive the storm. The road ahead for Kawasaki is fraught with challenges, but it's not too late to turn things around. The financial fallout, Kawasaki's costly mistakes. The ripple effects of Kawasaki's pricing missteps were far-reaching, and the financial fallout from their decisions has only deepened with time. What started as a bold attempt to capitalize on inflated demand during the pandemic has morphed into a financial crisis that's now threatening not only Kawasaki dealerships, but the entire motorcycle industry. Kawasaki's strategy to raise prices during the pandemic under the guise of high demand and limited availability might have seemed like a smart short-term fix to boost profits. However, the reality is that this pricing scheme wasn't just about increasing the cost of a motorcycle. It was about establishing a precedent that buyers would pay inflated prices and accept long-term financing terms without batting an eye. Initially, it worked. Showrooms were packed with eager buyers who didn't hesitate to sign over long-term loans for bikes priced well above their previous market value. But the financial consequences of this decision began to snowball. Dealerships that had initially made a windfall from these inflated prices soon found themselves sitting on inventory they couldn't move, with many buyers still paying off loans that had effectively tripled the original price of the bike. The real problem began when these loans started to hit their full-term payments. For buyers, the monthly installments that seemed manageable at first became burdensome over the long haul. But for Kawasaki dealerships, the damage was more immediate. As sales slowed and inventory accumulated, the financial pressure mounted. Many dealers had overextended themselves, banking on the continuing demand for these high-priced bikes. With showroom floors filling up with unsold stock, they found themselves facing severe cash flow issues, unable to clear their inventory, and forced into financial strain. The situation worsened with Kawasaki's slow response to market realities. They had raised prices aggressively during the pandemic, but the expectation of ongoing high demand soon evaporated. The economic slowdown, paired with mounting inflation and the rising cost of living, meant that buyers could no longer afford these inflated prices. The result? Dealerships were forced to either lower prices to get rid of the inventory they couldn't sell or risk having unsold bikes sitting on their floors, depreciating by the day. As Kawasaki's financial troubles mounted, the industry was forced to take notice. The ripple effect that started with Kawasaki's pricing strategy soon reached every corner of the motorcycle world. Dealerships were now fighting to stay afloat as they juggled inflated loans, unsold bikes, and an increasingly skeptical consumer base. The financial missteps Kawasaki made weren't isolated. They were part of a much larger issue that would impact everyone in the industry. The confidence crisis. Riders lose trust. The financial fallout from Kawasaki's pricing decisions didn't just hit the bottom line, it struck at the heart of what made motorcycling such an attractive pursuit for so many riders: trust. Kawasaki, like many other companies, had built its reputation on offering quality products at competitive prices. But when that balance was disrupted by inflated prices and hidden fees, the backlash from buyers was swift and unrelenting. For years, Kawasaki had been known for offering affordable bikes that gave riders a lot of value for their money. Riders knew they could rely on the brand for a high-performance machine without breaking the bank. But when Kawasaki raised its prices to levels that seemed unreasonably high, especially given the economic context of the pandemic, it shattered that trust. The prices didn't just climb, they exploded. Models that were once considered attainable for a wide range of riders, including young enthusiasts and first-time buyers, became exclusive high-end purchases. And the real kicker was the aggressive financing options that came along with these price hikes. Dealers pushed loans with long-term terms, ballooning interest rates, and hidden fees that ultimately forced buyers to pay far more than the sticker price. But it wasn't just about the price hikes, it was the way Kawasaki handled the situation. For many buyers, the experience of purchasing a bike from a dealership was supposed to be a rewarding and exciting moment, one that celebrated their love of riding. Instead, Kawasaki and its dealers turned the buying process into an exercise in manipulation. The once beloved brand became synonymous with financial strain and broken promises. This crisis of trust went beyond just the financial burden. It tapped into something much deeper: the relationship between rider and machine. Motorcycling was never just about owning a bike, it was about the experience, the freedom, and the thrill of the open road. But for many riders who were now burdened with excessive debt, that sense of joy was replaced with frustration. The emotional connection they once had with their bikes was lost. The broken trust wasn't just financial, it was emotional. And once broken, it's hard to rebuild. Kawasaki found itself in an uphill battle to restore faith in its brand. While they could lower prices and offer promotions, the psychological damage had been done. Riders were now wary, questioning if their loyalty was worth the cost. The gap between the brand and its customers had widened, and Kawasaki's attempts to bridge that divide would prove to be a long and difficult road. You're still here? Then you know this isn't just opinion. It's researched, verified, and based on real-world sales data. Smash that button, drop your experience in the comments, and let's keep going. A generation at risk: the motorcycle industry's future. One of the most significant consequences of Kawasaki's pricing blunder was the long-term impact it had on the future of the motorcycle industry. The rise in prices, combined with the negative perception of dealerships, left a growing generational gap that could reshape the entire industry. Younger riders, who were supposed to be the future of motorcycling, were turned off by what they saw as an unattainable lifestyle that came with high costs and hidden fees. Motorcycling, for many in Generation Z and Millennials, is no longer seen as a rite of passage. The financial barriers set up by Kawasaki and its competitors have only intensified this perception. With the soaring costs of education, housing, and the growing financial instability that younger generations face, buying a motorcycle is simply not a priority, especially not one priced at over $20,000 plus financing. Moreover, the shift away from traditional motorcycles to more affordable and sustainable alternatives, such as electric bikes and shared transportation, has also contributed to this demographic disconnect. Younger riders are less interested in the idea of owning a traditional motorcycle. Instead, they're drawn to the flexibility and practicality of ride-sharing apps and electric scooters. In fact, many young people in urban environments now see motorcycles as more of a relic of the past than an exciting form of transportation. This generational crisis isn't just a problem for Kawasaki. It's a ticking time bomb for the entire motorcycle industry. If younger generations don't buy into the culture of motorcycling, then dealerships will continue to struggle with falling sales, empty showrooms, and the death of a beloved tradition. Kawasaki, like all other manufacturers, must adapt to this change or risk fading into obscurity. The road ahead for Kawasaki is fraught with challenges, but it's not too late to turn things around. By focusing on affordability, transparency, and adapting to new consumer needs, Kawasaki can regain its place as a leader in the motorcycle industry. The battle for affordability. Kawasaki's next move. Kawasaki stands at a crossroads in the motorcycle industry. Its pricing strategies of the past have pushed buyers away, but now the company faces an imperative. It must find a way to offer affordable motorcycles without sacrificing the quality that its riders expect. The key to Kawasaki's future lies in reimagining its pricing structure while maintaining performance standards. Historically, motorcycle brands have been able to charge premium prices because they offered high-performance machines with exceptional craftsmanship. However, the landscape has shifted as buyers have grown more price-conscious and new competitors have emerged with affordable options. Kawasaki's pricing model has begun to alienate its core demographic. The challenge then is to strike a balance between affordability and quality. Kawasaki needs to revisit its design philosophy. The days of exorbitant markups must be replaced by a strategy focused on delivering value. This doesn't mean cutting corners or reducing the quality of the ride. Instead, it's about refining the manufacturing process, streamlining operations, and eliminating unnecessary features that don't add value to the rider. One possible solution is focusing on modular platforms, a strategy that would allow Kawasaki to offer customizable features at a lower base price, providing more options for riders without the need for costly add-ons. Furthermore, leveraging partnerships with suppliers that specialize in cost-effective materials could significantly lower production costs. This doesn't just mean cheaper components. It means more durable, reliable materials that would increase the overall lifespan of the bike. For example, using lightweight steel frames and advanced composites in key areas could reduce the weight of the bike while maintaining strength. In parallel, enhanced supply chain management, reducing the reliance on high-cost parts and ensuring timely availability of components could also help keep costs down. However, making bikes affordable doesn't only involve cutting costs. Kawasaki must also redefine what value means for the modern motorcyclist. Riders today expect advanced technology and smooth integration of digital features without paying exorbitant fees. Simple Bluetooth connectivity, standardized apps for navigation, and fuel-efficient engines are just a few features that today's rider expects to come with the bike. Kawasaki should look to integrate these technologies into their motorcycles without inflating the price tag. To remain competitive, it must move away from the old tactics of high-pressure sales and unnecessary add-ons and embrace the future, where consumers expect value, reliability, and honesty. The rebirth of the cruiser, new challenges and opportunities. Kawasaki's cruiser segment is in a precarious position, but it is also filled with untapped potential. To reclaim its footing, Kawasaki must redefine what a cruiser means in the modern motorcycling landscape. The traditional cruiser market, once dominated by brands like Harley-Davidson and Indian, has changed, with newer riders seeking a more practical, affordable, and less flashy approach to motorcycling. Kawasaki has already made inroads with bikes like the Vulcan S, but there is room for much more innovation. Riders today are looking for simple, reliable cruisers that offer great performance at an affordable price. Kawasaki's next step is to introduce cruisers that don't carry the baggage of overpriced accessories, excessive chrome, or outdated technologies. Instead, they need to focus on delivering lightweight, versatile cruisers that appeal to a wide range of riders. The key to Kawasaki's success in the cruiser market lies in its ability to adapt to the tastes of modern riders without abandoning the essence of what makes a cruiser bike special. Cruisers should still evoke that feeling of freedom and adventure, but they must do so without being overcomplicated or over-engineered. The Rebel 1100 could be a template for future cruisers, offering riders a no-nonsense ride that combines style, performance, and affordability in one package. That's the list. Dealers are moving these bikes for a reason. Hit like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe if you want the truth behind the bikes before anyone else sees it. See you in the next one.